We have a quorum, so let's go ahead and get started. Do we have any corrections to the minutes? I'm hearing no corrections to the minutes, so they will stand as read. If everybody's okay with it, we'd like to, Kirsten's on the road and has somewhat limited time. So we're gonna move item 2 up first since it's the primary discussion item. Unless there are any objections. Okay, let's talk about that.
Okay, yes. So as I was working, I was working on the door hanger and we were actually going through some of the reports that we had gotten about street obstructions. And so there were some with like the forestry department that had gotten some complaints, and then some with our public works department, and they were also getting some different complaints. And then we were all looking at our ordinances, and I was like, well, we have this document, and both our forestry and our public works department were like, why are all of these things in, all these separate different places? We should really look at, consolidating, and then that will also help with Denny's, enforcement policies, because, I was making the door hanger and I started adding some of these text things into it, and then it just became like a giant paper. It became basically this sheet. And so I was like, you can't fit all of this onto a door hanger. So we were looking for ways to, just start the discussion. We don't have to vote on anything today, but just to start the discussion of, where we can consolidate some of these things. And then also just some feedback on just a very brief, the door hanger that I wrote up. And so you can see where I start mentioning every single section that, the ordinance pertains to. And yeah, I only added those parts because, the wording itself was just too much to do. So I'm happy to hear any comments, anything that you guys have regarding this.
Kirsten.
Yeah, thank you, Daphne, so much for doing this. And I wonder if we, instead of writing up all of that stuff, if we could just put a link down so that people can refer to it online.
Yeah.
And the more simple we keep it, and I really like how you said, keeping your street or your sidewalk clear, you have until this day, and then we can just put a link to the ordinance. I feel it's on them to read how they are breaking the ordinance. And if they choose not to read it and choose not to clear it, they will be fined.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like the simplicity, Daphne. I thought that was effective. I don't know if this would be possible, but I was wondering if you could include the average fine or fee that would be assessed, or even a range, just to make it more concrete for folks. Yeah, sounds like maybe something we could do.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'd have to check in with Denny and our public works department to see how, how much they fine for something like that. But yeah.
Great.
Kirsten again.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I agree with Thea on that one, because I think that when they actually see the dollar amount, even if it's like $50 to $300, I think that money talks, and if they see how much they could possibly be fined, they'll take action.
In terms of I like the door hanger too. In terms of consolidation, I'm it looks like we're in three different chapters.
Mhm.
I'm not entirely sure how to merge them. Um,
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Because they're all like also slightly different because I know Public
right,
Works is specifically talking about the area between the sidewalk and the street, because that's public right of way most of the time. And then for forestry, I think they have this section about obstruction of view at intersections. So that's talking about like the vision triangles and stuff like that. So that's, on private property. Um,
right.
and so yeah, they're all like slightly different, but I think if you could point out, certain aspects of each thing that you guys might like a little bit more. Like for example, I think the cost portion is in the forestry code, which is like, the cost of removing any obstruction would be billed to, the tax, it would be tax basically added onto your property taxes, stuff like that. And so, something like that should, if you guys feel strongly about that, or, should it be on the tax, or should it be just, a fine that, property owners pay? Any kind of input, regarding that would be helpful.
Kirsten,
What regarding paying the fine, what is the easiest and least expensive way for the city to handle it? That's what I would vote on, whether it be added to taxes or
Okay.
processing a bill. We're pretty maxed out as far as work is considered for almost all city staff, and I want to make that easier on them.
Mhm.
Keaton,
Yeah, I kind of had a question here. I think the door hanger and the fines are great for the like foliage and things like that. But last time we did also discuss construction companies and various different entities like that obstructing the bike lanes and sidewalks. I biked Century and I biked the intersection a couple times this past week, and I'm not sure if they're allowed to or not, but the company there were putting cones out while I was biking towards them. So I was just hoping that any consolidation or rewriting of this could potentially include a mechanism for enforcement, you know, in that sense.
Yeah, that's a great point, Keaton.
Thanks.
Tad, Daphne, what Keaton just talked about, that would be more on the complete streets policy, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
Not the encroachment, so that would be based under the complete streets.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
that's a good point, Kirsten. But I think like in some like the complete streets policy right now doesn't have any kind of like teeth on, people who violate and stuff like that. So I think yeah, it is something that we'll have to probably look into as we, reorganize some of the ordinances to try and give that complete streets policy some more teeth so that people can, follow through with what we've, decided.
in with that in mind, um, hang on. Moving some of the visual probably moving some of the what is currently in the forestry. I'm looking at the dimensional limits on planting. And because that's about obstructing the clear sight triangle. And the trimming is also about obstructing the public right of way. And then 20, I think it, so thinking about that, the authority of the city forester part is probably fine where it is, but it's possible that 20.05 or 278 could either move to or simply be restated in chapter 8 as part of the obstructions and encroachments prohibited
Mm.
section. And I was saying dot like it's a computer program. I guess chapter 8, section 6, obstructions and encroachments. Because those are obstructions and encroachments.
Yeah, or at least, I mean, nowadays our code is all, online and you can cross-reference
Yes.
and link things. So at least
Yes.
have something like that included
Yeah.
yeah.
I I think that I think taking advantage of the Municode cross-reference ability does make a lot of sense there. And then on the door hanger we could reference the section 8 or the chapter 8 section, have just the one link as Kirsten was pointing out, and then from there they could link to all the relevant details.
Right.
Dale.
So I would put the reference on there, but is there like a definite point of contact that you put a definite phone number on there saying,
Mhm.
if you have any questions, contact this person, and then they could answer questions or point them in the right direction?
Yeah, that's a good point, Dale. I'll definitely add that to the door hanger.
Do we have any other feedback? All right. So it sounds like we're good to move on then.
Yeah, I
You
think I
got
have
you got what
enough
you need.
feedback. Yeah, and I'll start working on combining these ordinances and getting them in a way that people can actually read through it on like one page.
All right, sounds good. All right, so we are moving to the original item 1, discussion of the hover car framework. This is me giving kind of a pet talk. I was going through I was thinking about the upcoming joint meeting and going through some of the stuff that I have bookmarked for programmer reasons, and was reminded of this by Leah Veru. I really admire her. She's an important kind of leader in the programming space. And as I was reading through this, obviously the milestones are poorly named relative to what we're doing. We don't really care about hover cars. However, I thought many of the points it made, even though they were, of course, specific to program software product design, are relevant to us. We are in effect product designing the transportation network for the city. And so there are in effect, levels that are good enough and levels of what we really, really want. And I wanted, especially with the upcoming Public Works meeting in mind, I wanted us to be thinking about what we really, really want and be ready to actually articulate that. Well, we don't have to figure that out tonight, though we can. We have plenty of time. But in general, we should be thinking about that and articulating that. I often find that when a frequent response to my ideas about what we should be shooting for as a whole is, well, that'll never happen. And that bugs me a bit because people are deciding not to engage on the actual merits of the theory or proposal, and instead just deciding not to engage based around the whatever the current situation happens to be. So obviously we can keep going past that, and that situation may change. In fact, it almost certainly is already changing. I'll pep talk about that some later, but the first thing I wanted to do was articulate kind of my North Star, my hover car on this, and it basically, I feel like it breaks down to two things when I'm thinking about all this. One, first we separate our facilities, our roads and streets and paths, etc., based on going somewhere versus being somewhere. Being somewhere includes getting to places, actually getting in and out. And then within the going somewhere, as much as possible, we separate out first by speed and then basically by weight. As an example, on a very slow road, you can have cars and bikes in the same area on a very slow road. It's still not ideal. Ideally, we would still split them out because cars are much heavier. But in a pinch, we can get away with that. So, and that's why, again, this North Star concept resonates with me, because there's nothing in the laws of physics preventing us from organizing our streets this way. They're not organized this way because of historical reasons, because of all sorts of things, because we don't have the money to fix it, because people aren't interested in fixing it. Those can all change. But by having this general idea, we can know what actually matters and what's actually relevant for implementing it. So I also included this picture. It gets cut off, but my single favorite thing about this is that I called it lightly caramelized, a wonderful pun, but also a reference to Carmel, Indiana, which, if you're familiar with Carmel, Indiana, in downtown Carmel, Indiana, they have the Monon Bike Trail going through downtown, and they have a section where the trail runs right through a boulevard. Midtown Plaza is the specific area that inspired me on this. So very often, this is the specific setting of this is University between Park and Parmenter. It's slightly more than a half mile. No, it's slightly less than a half mile. I keep getting that confused. It's somewhere around a half mile. Which is only slightly longer than the Monon Trail through downtown Carmel. Very often we have heard the refrain when discussing bike access on University, there's no room. So this is a visual representation of how much room there actually is. Now, there are some issues, yes, with the implementation. There's no gutters on the street, for example, because Street Mix didn't have them. I learned today while going over the forestry code that the trees are actually technically too close together. I didn't know that. But that's an example, again, of a code thing that could change. the point is not to say we should definitely do this in that area, as cool as it would be, but to simply show what is in fact possible and discuss what actual trade-offs should be made. I think the last part of my pep talk is, I don't know, I have brought this up, and Mark and I have referenced this at various times during past meetings, but the Wisconsin DOT has a traffic counts map online, and you can go to their traffic counts website and just kind of look at traffic counts all over the state of Wisconsin. But if you zoom in on Middleton, I was just going there for fun because I'm me, and noticed that some of the preliminary 2025 numbers are actually up. And I think a great example would actually be in the general area that that picture was made for. So the University Avenue area, if Daphne, you can click on either of the big points between Parmenter. Yeah. So you do have to be careful, scroll down a little bit. You do have to be careful looking at the graphs because they're sized based on the specific point. They're not like a consistent Y scale. And sometimes there's only one data point. But I wanted to look at this because there's very often an assumption in the city that traffic is just inevitably going up. It's going up, it's going up, it's going up. If you look at this graph, what you will see is that for the past 20 plus years, traffic in that particular area of university is in fact flat. It goes down and it goes up and it spikes, but the overall trend line is just flat. In the same time, the city's population has grown by about 50%. There are all sorts of possible reasons for that. Maybe growth isn't happening in places that send traffic there. That's one reason. Another possible reason is Middleton's aging population. There are relatively more retirees than there used to be, and they just travel less. Another possibility is really that, and I think this has got to be part of it. I see more and more people using bikes outside my front door every day. More people walking, more people biking, more people taking the bus, especially now that the network's been redesigned. I also can't help but note that we put our biggest apartment buildings in the last 5 years along Allen and Century and Parmenter. And if you go to one of the Allen points, Daphne, you'll see that traffic along Allen is dropping. Much of the actual data that we have flies in the face of conventional wisdom. So I think it can be difficult. It can be difficult presenting this data, but we should be aware of this kind of thing so that we can we all think it's important anyway, whether this data confirmed our beliefs or not. But with this, we can pretty much feel confident that we are on the right track and that we can actually promote, and that people in Middleton are more and more like us in thinking that these things are important. And yeah, so be ready to discuss that at the Public Works meeting. It was my big thing. But we could discuss if anybody has a different North Star or a different kind of nuance they want to talk about, that'd be good for tonight too. But you don't have to. It's not a big deal. Kirsten.
Got a different North had. I love that. Nobody can do it. And the
Hang on,
skin
Kirsten, hang on. There's a bit of a
Yep.
connection issue.
Sure.
Could you start over?
Yep. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. No different North Star by any means. I'm spot on. I'm right at you. This could be used to help push through the trial, the trial traffic diet that you were talking about on Century, or we could do it on University. I think that numbers say everything. People can't argue with numbers. They can, but there isn't much weight to it. So whether we did a trial traffic diet on University between Park and Parmenter, or on Century between Branch and Parmenter, we can use all this data for that. And just see what happens. You know, see how people feel about it, and get the feedback.
Keaton,
I just wanted to jump on the boat and say, yeah, I really like your North Star. I'm gonna copy that down myself. Yeah, it's a very, very lovely vision, and I would love one day us to be able to achieve it, or something along the way to it. So thank you for putting it together, and yeah, on board.
all right. And then item number 3, which is kind of another FYI, sort of. We can discuss some things tonight, but intense discussion was not the exact point. So I was working on the Complete Streets Guide a bit more. And as I was talking to Daphne, one of my concerns for how we work on this has it's kind of slow, and it can take a long time for me to get feedback on it. And there are all sorts of good reasons for that, and there are all sorts of just kind of reasons for that. But what I was thinking is that by including this as a brief item in this meeting, it gives you the run up to the meeting to read it. It gives you, and then we will reintroduce it as a full discussion item next month. And that gives you a full month to read it, to mull it over in your head instead of just the run up to the meeting. And then we'll talk about it more in depth at next month for that meeting. Also at that meeting, there will be another new piece that we will continue this process so that we will introduce it. People will be able to, and this also gives the public a chance to look at what we're thinking way ahead of time and give us feedback. So that's the idea. We can discuss it tonight. If you have immediate feedback, that's great. If you don't, that's fine too. Just know that we have it here, and we will be discussing it in more depth next month. Just to give a quick overview of what we did include, I reintroduced, for the most part, it's mostly headings. I know we have a number of new members who weren't here the last time we discussed the outline, so I wanted to make sure that people got the chance to actually look at the outline, see kind of how I'm thinking it would be organized. I wanted to point out, I feel like it's very important to include the automobile network in the Complete Streets Guide. Because it's my personal belief that we don't actually, our streets are very often, our streets and neighborhoods are car dependent. They're not actually designed for drivers to do a good job. We often kind of make the simplest intersection it'd be more accurate to say we make the cheapest intersection we can and we expect drivers to figure it out. It's important to remember that the majority of people driving on our roads are not professional drivers. They're not even part-time drivers. They're not even quite hobbyist drivers, the majority of them. So expecting them to figure this out is probably not a good approach. So I am wanting to include automobility in here. I also think it's important on that note to include the trucking network, the commercial and deliveries network. That is very often neglected. My apartment complex does not have a place for delivery trucks to stop and make deliveries because it's not included in the code anywhere. The thing is, neither does the next building over, but it's older and just has a sea of parking. So it's not necessarily, it's not as obvious an issue, I would say. It's still there. So I'm definitely wanting to include that. And then besides the outline, what I did have at the moment was some wording that I'd been thinking in the principles section. I want to kind of have, I originally went with justifications and then I thought that sounds too defensive and also not structured enough. So it's towards the top. So these are again kind of North Star statements, so to speak, about why we're organizing it the way we are and what we're interested in. I personally think we need some numbers, some math. Like Kirsten was saying, it's harder to argue with numbers. I personally think we need some numbers, so I did include numbers. I'm also open to ideas of how to present those numbers in non-scary ways, because it can also be the case that numbers can both make paragraphs very long, so people check out, and numbers can also just be intimidating, so people get defensive. So feedback on that next month will, or tonight if you have it, but in general, that's kind of what I got for now. Give it a minute. All right. So we don't have any staff updates on the agenda.
No, I'll just note future event is we have our joint Public Works Ped Bike Transit meeting on October 13th at 6 p.m. It'll be hybrid, so you can still join online, but we will be in person at in the council chambers at City Hall.
All the fun map scribbling is happening in City Hall, so be there if you can.
Yeah, we'll try to show it on the screen for you guys as well, but you just won't be able to see, you know, what people are drawing on the actual maps. Yeah.
Brad?
For complete streets, what are we discussing with in the combined meeting? Like, are we just presenting it, or are we? I'm asking because I have an issue with something that's going on, and I want to talk about it with anybody I can talk about, and I
Yeah.
know it's part of complete streets. But how are we presenting to Public Works? Like,
Yeah, that's
what is our in, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we have a couple agenda items about the complete streets. So the first one is there is like a it's not the complete streets guide, but there is like a best practices guide that we've drafted that includes stuff like on-street bike lanes and, separated bike lanes and what kind of specs that the engineers kind of want to see more of. So we have a document related to that. And that will, I think, also include, like when do we use RFBs? When do we use, traffic circles, stuff like that. So that's one option. And then we do have a separate agenda item for that complete streets during construction guide. And so
Okay.
that, I know you have some issues with, especially High Road, yeah.
Yeah.
And so we have a drafted document of that, and I'll try and send it out to you guys as soon as it's completed. It'll probably be, hopefully by the end of this week, we'll have that done. And so then you can read over that and provide us feedback that way. And so
Okay.
that way, we have this, once we have this policy in place, especially because we are looking to redesign High Road, I think in 2026 for construction in 27, I think is that timeline. So, having this in place before we start, a whole nother construction project with High Road. So we'll have those two items. And then under the complete streets with construction, we'll have like sub bullet points of Century and Allen kind of talking through, what happened there, how to do better. And then also with High Road, what to look forward to, as there is construction ongoing and then in the reconstruction in the future.
And
And then the
I
third
don't,
thing, yeah. Oh, sorry.
yeah. So
Yeah.
and I don't mean to take our committee time about this, but the High Road situation is active right now.
Mhm.
And no one's communicating anything to, 300 households about why they can't walk into the city or bike into the city. The only communication we're getting is the road's closed, and no one's telling, is the path going to be fixed? Is it's any of that? Because we're very stuck right now. No one could do anything for uh for a week without driving because we have to drive. There's no safe way out of the neighborhood, even though we're part of the city.
Yeah.
So, and it's great that we should be fixing it in the future, but what about messaging for the current issue? Because there's, 30 kids who want to walk to school and they can't.
Yeah.
So is there a way that we can also bring that up with Public Works, or should we stay away from it and find a different avenue? Because I don't want to
Yeah.
cause trouble. I've spoken to Alder Hanairo about this, and I represent the HOA here, and
Mhm.
there's a lot of very angry people.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tough because that specific construction isn't public works. It's like,
Right.
home construction. So we
Yeah.
have been in contact with those contractors and, even driving on High Road right now is difficult because there's like this giant bump and we've told them to fix the bump. And so, yeah, that I think
Well,
would,
the current work is sewer work, though. Is
right.
that's not city work, or that
No, so it's sewer work for the
for the development? Okay.
yeah, for the development. So that's done by
Okay.
the private contractors.
Okay.
So yeah, it is a tough thing to juggle right now with Public Works because all they can do is really tell the contractor to fix things. And so that
Yeah.
is another, that is also part of that discussion because it's kind of the same thing that happened with Century and Allen. It's like,
Yeah.
we tell the contractors to do it and it's kind of up to them. So I think that communication though is definitely really important in the future to figure out before any contract work, any construction work goes out, to have these other options there in place.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately I have to miss the in-person meeting. I'm super bummed because I wanted to meet everybody and the map work sounded fun. I have a family obligation that I cannot get out of. But I was wondering if there's any way to participate like asynchronously to offer input on the map or even just, share thoughts via email.
Yeah, definitely. If you have, any comments on, the map when we put up the agenda and all of that, and you want to, go through it and read it on your own, and you have any of your own comments, feel free to send it to both me and Tad. And, if you can try and get it to us beforehand, then we can bring it up in the meeting, as your comments. But if not, you can just feel free to send them over to me and I can always incorporate them afterwards.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right, we are at the end of our agenda. Nobody has anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Hope to see many of you in week and a half-ish.
Yep.
Take care.
Bye.